Thank you for that. Okay, gentlemen. We're on Melachim Bet, Perek Kaf Gimel, which is 23, and we're going to start with Pasuk Yud Zayin, number 17. Now, I asked you to read Perek Yud Gimel from Melachim Aleph because the next two psukim refer back to that story. So I'm not going to rehash the story. I'll just remind you that there were two Navi'im, a Navi Sheker, a false prophet, and a real Navi. And at the end of the story, when the Navi, the real Navi, does something he's not supposed to do, and Hashem punishes him, the false Navi and the real Navi are buried near each other. And that's the basic background to these next two psukim. If you remember, what Yoshiyahu had been doing almost at the beginning of this particular chapter was going through almost on a rampage and rooting out and destroying any vestige whatsoever of Avodah Zarah, any kind of idolatry, which also was something like the subcategories of idolatry, such as having the bamot or the private altars, which were prohibited at that time, that people were using instead of serving Hashem properly at the Beit HaMikdash. Sometimes they're used for Avodah Zarah, sometimes used for a mixture of both. So let's take a look at Pasuk Yud Zayin. Also, if you have a Navi that has Rashi, I'm going to read just one thing. Just a second, let me tell you now. Just one thing from Rashi on this Pasuk and nothing else this evening. Everything else will be on the slides. Okay, so again, we're in Kaf Gimel 23, Pasuk Yud Zayin, where it starts with the word Vayomer. So during this rampage of burning and destroying and crushing and everything else and throwing into this valley and that valley, Yoshiyahu comes across a very strange thing that he sees. And we'll see why it's strange from Rashi. Vayomer, and all of a sudden, Yoshiyahu says to his men, Ma hatziyun halaz. What is that marker? I'm going to come back to that word in a minute, tziyun, but let's just say, like, what's that grave? Asher ani ro'eh. Where
is he now?
What do you mean, where?
I mean, what location is he?
He's near Beit El.
Okay.
Near Beit El.
Near Beit El.
Correct. What is this grave that I see? Vayomru elav anshe ha'ir, and the people of the city told him, Hakever ish ha'elokim asher ba mihuda. This is the grave of the true prophet who came from Yehuda to this area. Remember, Hashem told him you should go the one way, you can't come back the same way you came. Vayikra et hadvarim ha'ela asher asita al hamizbach Beit El. And this story occurred, knows they tell him, like, this is what happened, and this is what happened back then, and this is the Mizbeach of Beit El. Vayomer, and let me just read these two psukim, then I'm going to explain a little bit more. Vayomer, hanichulo, ish al yana atzmotav, leave him, do not touch his bones. If you remember, what he was doing until now was he was taking the bones of those people who were known to be buried as idolaters and was destroying the bones, burning the bones. He said, leave these bones untouched. Vayimaltu atzmotav et atzmot hanavi asher ba mishomron. So he left these bones for the Navi who came from the Shomron, meaning the false prophet, because they were near the bones of the true prophet. They didn't want to by accident come into contact. Okay, what's going on here? First of all, I'm going to discuss a word. The word is tziyun. The word tziyun, tzion, mitzuyanut, tzionut, tziyun hakever, the city of Yerushalayim, known as Tzion, is all the same word. It always means a marker. When you get a test and you get tziyun, you get a tziyun on the test. When you see a marker of a grave, it's called a tziyun hakever. Matter of fact, when you bury somebody, halacha is, you may notice next time you go, you shouldn't have to ever see another funeral. But in case that when they're done, many times what they'll do is they'll take a shovel and either scrape out a little rectangular shape around the grave, or make a little mound on purpose, which is kever, this is called your kiboret, because it means a mound, and that's what you have to have for the grave, a little mound. But the tziyun is that which is a marker, which is why, since Yerushalayim is Tzion, because it's the marker of the world, it's the place of Hashem in this world, so to speak, of the Shekhinah, and all these shorashim, all these different words with the same shorash. So now, what is it that caught his attention? It's just a grave. So if you remember, this is not the answer, this is just something similar. If you are familiar, I know Arnold is very familiar with the area of Shechem, with the Har Grizim and Har Eval, the two mountains, you know that that's the story where in the beginning of Yehoshua, at the request of Hashem back in Sefer Dvarim, that the Jews stood on two mountains. They split them up, and they gave the brachot on one mountain and the curses on the other mountain, and everyone had to say amen to the brachot and amen to the curses. To this very day, and I never remember which is which, one of those mountains, they're right next to each other, more or less. One of them is barren, and one of them is green with vegetation. One had the brachot, and one had the klalot. So if you look at these two mountains right next to each other, and you see like, wow, something's weird about this, take a look at Rashi. Yud Zayin, Mahat Tziyun Halaz. What is this marker? What is this grave? Ra'a kever mitzido echad ale kamshonim v'charulim, v'tzido echad hadasimu b'samim. He saw two graves right next to each other. One of them had thorns. I guess we translate it as thistles. It's hard for me to say that word. Thorns and thistles, thorns and thistles. And the other grave right next to it had myrtles growing and bisamim v'tama alav. And he was like wondering, v'amar mazeh, what is this? V'shivo oto zeh. And he responded by telling him, this is Rashi, which is not on the slide in front of you. He responded by telling him, okay, this is the story of what happened back many chapters ago, of course, and why they have these people buried where they are. So those are the two psukim that are connected to this, to that parak. Now, the next two psukim kind of continue the theme of destruction, of going after avodah zarah and idolatry. V'gam et kol Yud Tet, number 19. V'gam et kol batei habamot asher barei Shomron. All the different bamot, all the high places that were in the area of the Shomron. If you remember last time when we were together, Yoshiyahu had moved from the area of Jerusalem to the area of Bethel and Shomron in order to eradicate anything that was there left over from the 10 tribes. He said what he did there is that the kings of Israel had made lahachis, that had done to specifically anger God. Heisir Yoshiyahu. Yoshiyahu removed them. And what does he do? It sounds like the next pasuk, something very strange, but it's not. Take a listen. Vayizbach et kol kohanei habamot asher sham al hamizbachot. It sounds like he slaughtered the priests who had served on these high places, that he killed them. But that's not really what it means. I'm curious, what does your English say? Does it say he slaughtered them, he killed them? What does it say? I'm curious.
He slaughtered all the priests of the shrines
that
were there upon the altars.
Okay, so we're going to see that is not necessarily the case. We'll see in a minute. Vayisrof et atzmot adam alehem, and he burned their bones on them. Vayashav Yerushalayim, and he went back to Jerusalem. So these last two psukim, we have, again, I want to kind of not lose the momentum here of what's going on. Majority of the parak until what we started now tonight had to do with Yoshiyahu's campaign to rid the country of avodah zarah, mostly in the Jerusalem area. Moved to Bethel / Shomron area, continued doing there. He has this last little piece that he has to take care of, where he is going to destroy these bamot, and also we're told that it's not necessary that he killed these kohanim, but rather that they were already dead, and he put their bones on the mizbeach and he burned them. So it was ki'ilu, he eradicated them from this world. So therefore, he said that he slaughtered them. There are others who say that it's meant literally, that he actually did that.
Were the people around there?
Yes.
Because of the tribes have been exiled.
Right. So very good question. So Arnold asked, the tribes have been exiled. So who are these people? So I don't have it.
People.
What's that?
The priests, I guess.
Right. So I'm just going to read one line from the Dot Sofrim, which again I don't have a slide for. It says as follows: "B'chozot hayu od anashim sham." In spite of everything that happened, there still were people there. Sridin shel aseret hashvatim, some remnants of the original 10 tribes, shelo galu, who were not exiled, or chazvu limkomam, or did somehow made their way back. So there were still evidently some Jews that were left over or had returned, and these are the people who in the city are telling the story to the king as to what's going on over here.
Well, people went to Jerusalem.
And so, very good. Some people went to Jerusalem to escape, which we're going to see. Actually, we're going to come to that. Tov. Now, the next thing is what I call, and I know some of you know this, is the roses are red issue. Roses are red, violets are blue. I like peanut butter. Can you swim? There does not seem to be a logical flow with what's about to happen. If you turn the page and go past the next couple of psukim and start looking at pasuk kaf daled, You'll see again, the Ovot and Yidonim and Trafim are destroyed. And all of a sudden, before that pasuk, we have 2 psukim about Pesach. What gives? Take a look. Pasuk Kaf Aleph. We're going to look at Pasuk Kaf Aleph and Kaf Bet, and then we're going to look at a couple of slides. Kaf Aleph. Vayitzav HaMelech et kol ha'am lemor. The king commanded the people, saying, Asu Pesach, make a korban Pesach, bring a korban Pesach. LaHashem Elokechem, to Hashem your God. Kakatuv al Sefer HaBrit Hazeh, as it says in the Torah. Ki lo na'asa ka-Pesach hazeh mimei hashoftim asher shaftu et Yisrael, because the korban Pesach was not done since the days of the Shoftim, v'chol yemei malchei Yisrael u'malchei Yehuda, nor through the entire time of the kings of Israel and the kings of Judah. That is a shocking, shocking statement if we take it literally. It doesn't even make any sense. Now, first of all, in the time of the Shoftim, when the Mishkan, we didn't have a Beit HaMikdash. The Mishkan was in Shiloh for 369 years. It was in Nov, it was in Givon. We're going to see how that impacted it. But you mean to tell me that until the end of Sefer Melachim, from the time of the Shoftim, we're talking hundreds of years, no Korban Pesach? So we're going to take a look at 2 opinions on what's going on here. One is the Dat Sofrim, and one is going to be the Malbim. Okay, so let's put this on. Yeah, so for those of you on your phone, for those not at home, but in the studio audience, you can go onto your phone and you will see the of all the slides I sent. We was talking now in the first, we're going to go to the first slide. It should start with the words Vayitzav, Pasuk Kaf Aleph, Vayitzav. Okay? Tov. Vayitzav. Kadavar ze ulai lo haya b'Yisrael ad hayom hazeh. It's possible. Now, first of all, what I stressed as a question was, wait a minute, they haven't done a Korban Pesach, but there's another question that comes before this. What's the king all of a sudden giving this command to make a Korban Pesach? That's not the job of the king. It's possible that this kind of an event did not happen to this very day. He wasn't just commanding them to bring the Korban Pesach, but part and parcel of that was the mitzvah of Aliyah L'Regel, which meant that a person had to go to the Har HaBayit during the Chagim. This is me Pesach. But we don't see that a king has ever commanded the people before this to do that. Mitzvot Hashem, hutlu al kol adam Yisrael mibei shamin. Everyone has equal responsibility to follow mitzvot. Dvarim rabim mesurim gam bidei Beit Din. There are many things that Beit Din have the responsibility to command, and to force them to be done. Usually they have to do with public works and various things that have to do with communal responsibility. And specifically also the part of the Beit Din's job was to punish those who sin. There is no basis for the king himself to give his own order, his own tzivui, in addition to what's already in the Torah that's not done, such as commanding them to do aliyah l'regel. Yoshiyahu oseh, but Yoshiyahu does this. He has a reason for this. He is hoping that now that he's eradicated the Avodah Zarah, now he is also maybe going to be able to quench, so to speak, God's anger, and maybe have God retract his edict of destruction of Beit HaMikdash. Maybe we can even learn from this that in certain circumstances there is a requirement for the king to step up and say certain things that need to be said, or command certain things that need to be commanded. But what does it say in Pasuk Kaf Aleph also? That he oops, I went backwards just a minute. We're now on the next slide where it says Kaf Bet. It says Kaf Bet. Ki lo na'asa ka-Pesach hazeh. Okay. What does this mean? That there was no Pesach done, no Korban Pesach. No Korban Pesach, and ostensibly no Aliyah L'Regel. Once again, Aliyah L'Regel is the mitzvah of going every time there's a Chag, the 3 regalim, the Shalosh regalim are called it because of Aliyah L'Regel. There was a korban that was brought called the korban olat re'iyah, because part of the mitzvah of being of Aliyah L'Regel was what's called Lir'ot U'Lehiraot, which means to see and be seen on Har HaBayit. Just be there. Like Woody Allen Lahavdil, 99% of life is just showing up. Okay, Lahavdil. I shouldn't quote him. But according to the way the perspective Dat Sofrim is, he's going to take what says here in these psukim literally. Let's take a look. B'Shiloh lo na'aseh, when the Mishkan was in Shiloh, perhaps there was no Aliyah L'Regel, mipnei or Korban Pesach, mipnei shelo hayta chovat Aliyah L'Regel l'shem mefureshet kol kach. There was no specific clear mitzvah to do Aliyah L'Regel to the Mishkan. Remember, the Mishkan was a temporary, although for many hundreds of years it was there. It wasn't the Beit HaMikdash. Lachar shecharva Shiloh, and after Shiloh was destroyed, bevadai lo ra'a ha'am tzorech lavo lenov v'legivon. The people saw no need to come to Givon or to Nov, which were the other places that temporarily the Mishkan was. Lakriv korban Pesach. They felt no need to do it. V'zogan lo hayta chova min haTorah, nor was there a requirement from the Torah to do it, because the requirement was when there was a Beit HaMikdash. And then it says, Mimei HaShoftim,
Requirement to what?
bring Korban Pesach.
Oh, so there's no, okay, so there was no central.
There was no, since there was no central Beit HaMikdash, there was a temporary quote unquote Mishkan. Therefore, al pi mitzvah HaTorah, there was no mitzvah yet of Korban Pesach.
Could they have done it on the Bama?
Ah, very good. That's a very good question. We're going to deal with that, but not tonight. We're going to see later. We're going to see later. Very good. And it says, though it was done, this is the issue is Mimei HaShoftim, from the days of the Shoftim, Hainu b'Mishkan Shiloh, the times of when there was the Mishkan in Shiloh. Then it says also, nor was it done during the times of Malchei Yisrael and Malchei Yehuda. First of all, what's the problem with that statement? Whether it's true or not, what's the problem with the statement is that it puts the order of the kings of Israel, the northern territory, before the kings of Yehuda, where the Beit HaMikdash itself was. It says now, Hukdemu kan Malchei Yisrael and Malchei Yehuda. He puts in order, he first puts the kings of Israel before the kings of Yehuda. Why? Malchei Yisrael hayu ashemim bioter. The kings of Israel in the northern kingdom were much more guilty. The fact that the Jews didn't go aliyah l'regel to the Beit HaMikdash, the kings of Israel, the northern territory, were very responsible for preventing that from happening. Evidently, the kings of Israel were also not, of Yehuda, were not so big into pushing the people to go aliyah l'regel, even in Yerushalayim. Mipachad, because they're of the fear, Shema Yifnu Biglazel Lemachei Yisrael. Maybe somehow they would also then migrate more towards the kings of Israel, to their territory. Now, when we were learning in early days of Sefer Melachim Aleph, and we had a Beit HaMikdash, we were astounded, at least I was, by the fact that the entire system of the northern kingdom, starting with Yeravam and Nevat, when you put the Egel Hazav and Dan and one in Beit El, there was tremendous amount of political tension, and people wouldn't go down to Yerushalayim. They actually put guards in the way so that people couldn't go down to Yerushalayim, because the kings of Israel, of the northern kingdom, were afraid that they would stay down there. And now we're also learning that the kings of Yehuda were afraid that the people of the area of Yehuda were going to go up north, and then there'd be all this other problems. Ka'amur. As we said, there is evidently no real requirement of a king in any case to force, to adjure, to suggest to the people to do aliyah l'regel. From here it seems, even in the times of the Beit HaMikdash of Shlomo, Kimikdash called, next slide, Ha'am, there may not even have been in his days, again, this is the perspective of the Dat Sofrim. I'm not saying everyone agrees with this, but there may not have been a general call to action to actually do Aliyah L'Regel, because the people had yet to become used to going up. And they constantly found, let's just say, excuses. גם על פי דין מעלייה הקשה, מן השפלות, להרים, הגבוהים של ירושלים. They used it as potentially excuses by saying, can't schlep all the way to Yerushalayim. We're in the lowlands. We're going to step all the way up to the mountains. Now, before I continue, you may think that that's such a weenie wuss kind of, like, give me a break, right? Okay. So there is now what I'm about to say, I've taught many, many times. It's the only reason I know this by heart. There is a famous Gemara, Masechet Ketubot, that talks about whether or not the idea of aliyah, not aliyah l'regel, but aliyah, moving to Israel. Because there's a whole Mishnah there about what a husband wants. Can he force his wife to make aliyah? Can the wife force her husband to make aliyah? You have to give a get, not have to give a get. Pay the ketubah, not pay the ketubah. So the Gemara has a whole discussion there around Kuf Yud Bet, near the end of Masechet Ketubot, about the topic of aliyah. There's a Tosfot there, which is quoted, and I'd say quoted as in when people need to make excuses for why they don't make aliyah. There's a man who's quoted the Rabbeinu Chaim. Rabbeinu Chaim, who is a Dat Yachid, whom we do not paskin like, says in Tosfot, nowadays, and he's talking about the approximate years, the 1200s, around the 13th century, now there is no longer a requirement to go to Israel. For two reasons. One, because it's very dangerous to go. And besides which, look, there's so many mitzvot that we have to keep there. And who's going to be able to really keep all those mitzvot? So we don't. Okay, forget the fact that it's nonsense. And there's actually people who say that Rabbeinu Chaim, there's no Rabbeinu Chaim, and it was a complete mistake, and it was a complete addition by someone who, I guess, was from a certain camp.
It was dangerous, man.
It was dangerous, but that is one of the reasons why a person may not have to make aliyah. But he adds on to that in Tosfot that even if it wasn't dangerous to go there all together, why would we want to add so many mitzvot that we have to do and not be able to do and not really able to keep them properly, which is ridiculous. Okay. So it's not so far-fetched that even the time of the Beit HaMikdash, remember, they weren't used to making aliyah l'regel. So if a person lived down south or up north to schlep, in quotes, to Yerushalayim, and even if they were in the Jerusalem area to go up, because remember, it's aliyah, you're going up towards Yerushalayim. Imagine going from Aliyah Dumim to Yerushalayim, you're going up about 250 meters, I think, because we're about 500, that's about 750. I only know that because I look at the signs. And so therefore, people would say, look, we've never done this before. It wasn't for my father in the shtetl. There was no shtetl. No. He never did it in the shtetl. I don't have to do it either. They didn't, it wasn't part of their culture yet. So at this point, it would appear that there was no Korban Pesach. There was no Aliyah L'Regel for centuries. That's what it looks like according to Dat Sofri. Take a look now, please, at your the next screen. Now, what I sent to your phones is the last slide, the Malbim, where it says Malbim on the top. It's in English where it says Malbim. You know what I'm saying? Like everything I sent you, it should be the last thing I sent, because I had to jump ahead. The Malbim has a very different perspective on what's going on here. Remember I said, like, what's going on? All of a sudden, they just pop in about Pesach. He's talking destruction and burning and wiping out this and Molech and all. And then he's going to talk about the Ovot, and you don't even know, oh, Pesach. Take a look. After the king destroyed the high places and the Avodah Zarah, he commanded people should keep Pesach, bring the Korban Pesach. Shegam Pesach Mitzrayim haya ikar inyano levatel to'avat Mitzrayim shayu ovdim lemazal taleh. Listen what Malbim says, a tremendous idea. Why all of a sudden is the king making a comment to the people? Okay, now we have to bring the Korban Pesach. First of all, it had to be Pesach time, obviously. But why all of a sudden say this? Because the Malbim says that part of the purpose of Korban Pesach in Mitzrayim the first time was what? What do the Jews have to do? On the 10th day of Nisan, they were to take a lamb. They were divided between the families. They would tie it to their bedpost. They would leave it there until Erev Pesach, what we call Erev Pesach, which was Chag Pesach, as opposed to Chag HaMatzot, which was what we call Pesach. And they would bring it, then on the Erev Pesach, on the 14th of Nisan, it was brought as a Korban. Why? Why that? Why not a cow? Why not? Because remember that was their God. They looked at that as being their deity. So since the Malbim says that just like back then, when they destroyed the part of the purpose of the Korban Pesach was to destroy, in the Jews' eyes, the Avodah Zarah, he felt now that this is not a diversion, this is a continuation of the destruction of all these idolatry things, because it also has to be eradicated from the Jew himself. This is a quote from the Pasuk in Shemot, where they say to Moshe Rabbeinu, like, wait a minute, if we shech their gods, what, they're not going to stone us? When it says that Pesach like this was not made, he says clearly, the Malbim says, it doesn't mean there was no carbon Pesach brought at all from the time of the Shoftim until now. It was not done in the most proper way, in complete purity, spiritual purity. Nor with the complete eradication of idols. And also accompanied by the removal of the high places. Ad ha'et hahi, until that very day. Meaning, he says, the Malbim says that yes, they did bring Korban Pesach, but it was tainted, because it's the surrounding area was still filled with Avodah Zarah, was still filled with Bamot, was still filled with other things. So it wasn't done, because he says, how does he figure this out? Just take a look at the Pasuk. It says again in Kafbet, Kilo na'asat ka Pesach hazeh. Like this Pesach. It doesn't say Kilo na'asat Pesach. It says ka Pesach hazeh. That this is unique in this particular time, that this way was performed, in that it was with purity, with no Avodah Zarah around them. The fee should be made. You want to say something?
Well, I'm saying, perhaps now you've removed all the banners, there was nowhere else to do it, so they had to have a Pesach.
Oh, very good.
So that could be why it's
yes,
stuck in.
Very good. Very good. Excellent point. The fee should be made. Shaul v'David hayu abamot b'Yisrael. We know this, that in the time of David and Shaul, the first king, the sort of first king and the real first king of Israel, there were still bamot. Until the day of Chizkiyahu, there were still bamot. And also, like it says in Divrei Yamim, they didn't all participate in the Korban Pesach. Okay, so let's go back into the text. Okay, we're going to pick it up now. Pasuk Kaf Gimel.
Yeah, it says, but
Mm-hmm.
it says it was done specifically in Yerushalayim.
Right.
So that might be the opposite.
That's correct. That is. You're right.
Hmm.
Very good. Kaf Gimel. Ki im b'18 shana lemelech Yoshiyahu naseh ha'Pesach hazeh laHashem Yerushalayim. It wasn't until the 18th year of the reign of Yoshiyahu that this occurred. That this Korban Pesach brought, with almost all vestiges of Avodah Zarah taken away from Israel, that it occurred. Now, it tells us a little bit more, one last hurrah of destruction, Kaf Daled. וגם את האבות ואת הידונים ואת הרפים ואת הגילולים ואת כל השיקוצים אשר נראו בארץ יהודה וירושלים ביער יאשיהו. And all these different, the avot and yidonim were various, these are the necromancers and the ones who would raise the dead, and the ones who would consult with the bone in their armpit, and all these weird things, and all these different little idols were all destroyed by Yoshiyahu. Leman hakim et divrei Torah ktuvim al hasefer shematza Chilkiyahu Kohen ben Bet Hashem, in order to keep the words of the Torah and that which was written in it, which Chilkiyahu had found in the Beit HaMikdash. So this parak, by the way, which has 37 psukim, just a minute, let me see, 37 psukim. We're now on pasuk. We finished now up to pasuk 25. So 25 of the 37 psukim deal with, for the majority, basically for almost the entire thing, Yoshiyahu's actions in eradicating, getting rid of Avodah Zarah, Avodah Zarah, the bones of the people who served the Avodah Zarah or acted actually as the Kohanim, the institution or the reinstitution of the Korban Pesach, because now it can be done in the most proper way, He was a righteous, upstanding man, a wonderful king. Ad kedei kach, to such an extent that the Navi tells us as follows. Yirmiyahu says as follows in Pasuk Kaf Hey, number 25. V'chamohu lo haya lefanav melech asher shav el Hashem v'chol levavo v'chol nafsho v'chol meodo k'chol Torat Moshe v'acharav lo kam kamohu. An unbelievable statement. It says, this is Yirmiyahu Hanavi was writing these words, that before him there was no melech who so completely did tshuva with his entire heart, his soul, and his might, nor was there a person, a king after him, who did anywhere near that level of tshuva. Now, what should you expect the next sentence, the next pasuk to tell us? At this point, when you hear this unbelievable amount of tshuva, what has he done? Put it in perspective. He's gone, for the most part, in all the areas that Jews live, gotten rid of all what he's supposed to get rid of, bringing Korban Pesach, or having the Jews bring Korban Pesach for the first time in centuries the right way, according to the Malbim, and according to Dat Sofrim and maybe others, but I haven't looked, maybe for the first time. Yirmiyahu extols this melech of this tremendous amount of tshuva he did. He obviously chooses chol nafsho, levavo nafsho modo, because he's using the words from Shema, chol nafshecha, chol levavcha, nafshecha modecha, and there wasn't anyone after him like that. The only other place that we have a phrase that's like this that I can think of is Moshe Rabbeinu. That Moshe Rabbeinu, lo kam kamohu, there was no one like him. Then there never, and we also say that this is part of the, we use this terminology, the Rambam uses it in the Gimli Karim, that there will not be another Navi like Moshe. What should the next thing be? It should be
Some kind of redemption.
right. Mark said some kind of redemption. It should be now that Vayasho and Hashem rejected, rescinded his command that the Beit HaMikdash was going to be destroyed. Shalom Yisrael. That's what you'd expect. But you'd be wrong. Take a look at the next pasuk, Kaf Vav. And this is going to bring us into a little bit of a philosophical discussion, a very long, not long, but longer in the Dat Sofrim. And then we're going to talk about a couple of people that you may know of in Talmud. Kaf Vav. However, Lo shav Hashem mecharona po agadol. Hashem did not turn back from his extreme burning anger. Asher chara po bihuda, that he was anger was burning against Yehuda. Al kol ha'ke'asim asher yichiso min Menashe, from all the anger that he had built up because of Menashe. Now you remember that when the Navi told Yoshiyahu that the Beit HaMikdash was going to be destroyed, he also said, "You're not going to live to see it." Because Hashem wanted him to die, what we say, b'seva tova. He wanted Hashem wanted him, because of the fact that he was about tshuva such an extent, that he would be able to die not having seen the terrible, horrible thing of the destruction of Beit HaMikdash. Parenthetically, this week I was with school. I went with a small group of students as a melaveh, as a chaperone, to the burnt house, to the Beit HaSaruf in the old city, Mishpachat HaKatros. I've been there a number of times, and every time I'm there, I find it's very moving. It really is. And what it is basically is a house from the time of the second Beit HaMikdash. They found remnants of things that were burnt. They basically found the basement, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the basement of the house. Really? You got to see it. It's amazing. It's right at the entrance to the Rova, as you're about to go down the stairs. Okay. So, and they have now, the last few years, they put a new audiovisual presentation where you actually get walked through with through people. It's almost like a 3D, not 3D movie, but whatever it might be, that you have someone narrating and the family, and then at one point, so what they found, there are actual remnants of burnt things there from the time of the second Beit HaMikdash, including the hand of a young girl holding a small spear. And within the audiovisual presentation, they show you what they believe is how that came to be. And at one point, the windows of this burnt house, they open up through the animation, and you see the Beit HaMikdash burning. And the person who is, the people that are looking out is supposed to be the Kohen Gadol and his wife. And he gives this, it must have been very cathartic when this actor did it. This, scream, what do you call it? What's it called? No. It's like a scream that comes from mamish deep inside you. It's called a whatever. But he gives this
From the
unbelievable,
depths of his soul?
a what?
A scream from the depths of his soul?
No, it's a word. There's an actual word for that kind of a
The
scream.
word?
I'll think of it.
Shry,
What's that?
a shry, shry.
No. What is it? I forgot. Oh, it'll come to me. But he gives you're seeing the Beit HaMikdash burning, and the pain, this amazing actor. I mean, he was pretty good in most of this, but this moment, the pain in his face and the scream that he gave, and seeing the Beit HaMikdash burning and going in flames after having said, there's no chance God's going to let this happen. It's not going to happen. This is the view, in a sense, that Yoshiyahu was saved from by Hashem because of the fact he did tshuva. But tshuva was not enough to rescind and retract Hashem's statement that the Beit HaMikdash was going to be destroyed. Now let's take a look at, 1 second. Share screen, this. Okay, let's take a look at this slide, which says, a decree that could not be wiped out, mevutald, how you say it in English.
Revoked.
Revoked, thank you. Okay, Kaf Vav. Ach lo shav. It said the title says Hagzera she'efshar haya levatla. You have it? Okay. Uvda zo nir'et k'miya'eshet me'od.
Yes, already?
Oh, I'm sorry. The next slide. It says,
What was the last one?
I did the last one. I jumped ahead. Now go
Oh,
back.
okay.
It's like the third or fourth slide, maybe. It should say Hagzera she'efshar.
Gafa, right?
Kaf Vav. Ach lo shavu. Right. Lo shav. You find it?
No.
There's like a bold title. It says Hagzera she'efshar haya
Oh, yeah,
levatla.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
got it. Okay, so the first statement that Sofri makes is very sensible. This fact that after all this hard work of Yoshiyahu, that Hashem did not rescind his or revoke his gzera, is something it causes a tremendous amount of despair. If all this work was done, all these actions of destroying the Avodah Zarah and doing this tshuva didn't help, what else could be done? Ulam, ka'amur, hayu rov ma'asei Yoshiyahu pu'ulot yachid ufkudat melech. He said, look, we have to be practical here. What actually really happened in this parak? It wasn't all of Am Yisrael running around the country and saying, oh, this is great, we have to destroy all the Avodah Zarah, but it was Yoshiyahu, the king, and some of his entourage, and it was being done by his command. Torat Yisrael lo yechola lehitkayem bidrachim ka'elu. L'shem zeh darush haratzon ha'atzmi shel ha'am. Ratzon zeh ne'edar. What did Hashem want? He didn't want the king to be the only one doing this. The king was the symbol. The king was the one who was trying to run the show, but the people should have followed in his footsteps and done this, and that potentially could have changed everything. Again, the people stood by silently. Why do I say again? Last week's Parsha, Parshat Korach. We learn a lot about what the Torah records, and we learn a lot about what the Torah does not mention. Did it ever occur to you to ask yourself, there were these 250 people that were coming against, plus Korach, coming against Moshe and Aaron. And there's no mention in the Torah of, okay, a group from Shevet Dan came forward and tried to support Moshe and Aaron and for his honor and say, what do you do? Not a peep out of Am Yisrael. They stood by.
But even afterwards,
they complained, you killed the men of God, right? But even during the thing, not one stood up. Imagine, Chas v'sholom, I walk into the Beit Midrash at Yeshivat Be'erkat Moshe, and I go up to Rav Sabato Shlita, and I insult him. I push him, God forbid. I insult him publicly, and I say, you're nothing, and you're never anything, and your Torah is worthless, and who made you the big cheese here? Thank you. How fast would it be before I get pulled up, and rightfully so, by my payas and thrown out of that building, if not beat up? And that's just one person who, without being Kol HaKavod to Rav Sabato, was a tremendous gadol b'Torah, He's not Moshe. No one is. He's not an Aaron. And no one responded. And here too, we have the same problem. Here we have the king
Rabbi?
trying to, yes.
I get this all the time.
You get beat up all the time?
No.
Insulted all the time?
When I'm in certain neighborhoods and they hear I'm from Mali Adumim, they say, oh, Rav Deutsch. Rav Deutsch, I've met him once. I'm sure he's a great guy. But they act like he is the Rosh Yeshiva of Mali Adumim.
I know.
Of Mali Adumim.
I know. I've never even met him.
I'm not saying anything against Rav Deutsch. But I have to respond. I said, Rav Yoshua Katz is Ashkenazi Rav. Rav Mordechai Nagari is Sephardi Rav.
Right.
And I have to admit, the last time they did it to me, I said either a Rosh Yeshiva is Harav Rabba Nevazecher Tzadik Uvracha, or today I say it's Harav Shirat or Rav Sabato.
Right.
And I get this, and I respond
Interesting.
every time.
Good for you. Good for you.
What does he get?
What he gets is there's a Rav Deutsch who's in more the Haredi community here.
Yeah.
And when he is in a Haredi neighborhood.
I have not said any, wait. I have not said anything against Rav Deutsch here.
Oh, no, Chas v'shalom, I know that. It's not at all. Not at all.
I want to make sure I'm
so
quoting.
he is often hears, oh, you're Malei Adumim, Rav Deutsch. And not hearing Rav Sabato's name, doesn't hear Rav Rabinovich Zatzal, not Rav Shilat, Rav Deutsch.
Is he based here?
So, yeah.
Is he davening in the Happy Meal?
No,
Not
Deutsch?
that-
No, not him. No, it's a different person who is in a different part of the community. Okay, so yeah. So the Jews didn't step up this time. So therefore, we already can see a possible reason why Hashem's anger is not rescinded from this Gzerah. Hagzerah kvar hayta gzura mimei Menashe. The die was cast already from the days of Menashe. Peulot Yoshiyahu hitzlichu le'akev ota. What did Yoshiyahu achieve? That there was a delay in the destruction of Beit HaMikdash. Zayas sachar mifalav. That was the reward for his actions. Lioter lo yachol haya letzapot. He couldn't have expected anything else or any more. Ki hatshuva mekora ha'ikari hi be'arichut apayim. B'zeh she'Hashem dochet ha'onesh biglal ha'nechonot ha'mitgale befeulot ha'chozer b'tshuva. What is it that Hashem does, he said, when a person does tshuva, that he pushes off the gzerah? It's either pushed away forever or temporarily, and that's about the best Hashem, quote unquote, could do at this point when Yoshiyahu did his tshuva. Ulam bizman, next slide for those of you following on the phone. Shebarur she'atshuva hi ach tofa'a cholefet, but when a tshuva that is done is only fleeting and not lasting, shelachar mikein yachzor hachoteh lachato, that the sinner will continue returning to sin, en erech l'tshuva. There is no value to that tshuva. Now, yabarur shekoach mifaleh Yoshiyahu zmani. So we see now clearly that the actions, the power of what Yoshiyahu did was only temporarily. So what happens?
Rabbi?
Yes.
One thing about people not stepping up. Under the two previous kings, apparently anybody tried to keep Torah was killed.
Under the two previous, yes. So you're saying that they didn't step, but because they were worried?
I would kind of be a little suspicious now, and not necessarily let my feelings go, because I'd be a little afraid.
Okay. I understand what you're saying, but this didn't just happen in one day, right? This was over a period of time, and no one in the time of Yoshiyahu was being put to death for learning Torah or teaching Torah. Things have been cleaned up. So maybe, I mean, look, I don't know how they felt and what's going on in their minds. So there could be a possible reason that they kind of didn't step up. Quite possible.
Like 55 years of Menashe's reign, which was the longest reign that we mentioned before.
That's correct.
Right.
Okay. Now,
that's a lot.
Let's look at one more pasuk, and then we're going to look at another slide. So I'm just going to keep it right now on the screen share for the next slide. But let's first look at the pasuk. Take a look at Kaf Zayin, number 27. Vayomer Hashem, gam et Yehuda asir me'al panai. Also Yehuda, I will remove from in front of me, from my face. Kasher hasiroti Israel, just like I removed the northern kingdom from Israel, same thing's about to happen to Yehuda. Uma'asti et ha'ir hazot asher bacharti et Yerushalayim. And I've been disgusted by the city that I personally chose, Jerusalem. V'et habayit, and the house. Asher amarti yeshmisham, the house that I said shall might be the rest of the place for my name. Okay, this is like another feel-good pasuk. Look now at this next slide, please, which starts with the words Uma'asti et ha'ir hazot. Okay, you get on your phones. This was probably one of the most difficult things to accept. Because we should have assumed potentially, apparently, that the Beit HaMikdash and Yerushalayim would have some kind of their own zechuyot or merits to survive anything of God's anger. In spite of what happened bad in those areas, representing this terrible series of events was how Yirmiyahu cries out in Echa yashva badad ha'ir, kitzad ze yitachen she'ir zot teshev badad. How is it possible? And when we learn Echa, we're going to spend some time on that first pasuk. How is it possible that the city of Yerushalayim should sit alone? In spite of the fact that there was still so much kedusha. Then it says that this house that I decided that was going to be for me, also I don't want. Next line, it says, even more hard to understand, that Hashem should destroy his house, his Beit HaMikdash, because of the bad things that happened in it. Just like we should have thought, that just like Hashem doesn't destroy the sun or the moon because of the fools who may bow down to it, or them, that he wouldn't also destroy the Beit HaMikdash just because people did stupid, terrible things in the Beit HaMikdash. Why should the Beit HaMikdash suffer for it? It's Ke'ilu that someone says, I'm taking my ball and going home, right? I'm taking off screen share. I'm going to read another pasuk. Kafchet. I'm going to read 2 or 3 more pasukim and not do any depth on them tonight. Because I need a couple minutes to discuss scheduling. All the rest of what Yoshiyahu did, they're written in the book of Chronicles of the Kings. Now notice it doesn't say he died yet, because there's still one more story. Biyamav, in his time, Allah Pharaoh Necho, he's called Pharaoh Necho in English. Pharaoh Necho, Melech Mitzrayim, Melech Ashur, al Nahar Prat. Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, came to the king of Assyria by the river Prat, by the how do you say it in English? Euphrates. Thank you. I couldn't think of it. Vayelech HaMelech Yoshiyahu likrato, and the king Yoshiyahu went out to meet him, to greet him, or to go to battle with him. We'll see next time. Vayemiteu b'Megiddo, and he, Pharaoh Necho, killed Yoshiyahu in Megiddo. Kiroto, when he saw him. Now, again, this obviously leads to quite a few questions. What do you mean when he saw him? And why did he just kill him? Did he not kill anybody else? Lamed. Vayarkivu avadav met mimegiddo. So the servants of Yoshiyahu, the king, took him from Megiddo on horse. Vayiviuhu Yerushalayim, and they brought him to Jerusalem. Vayikberuhu bikvurato, and they buried him in his burial place. Vayikach am haaretz et Yehoachaz ben Yoshiyahu, and the people, let's just right now say the people took Yehoachaz, son of Yoshiyahu, and they anointed him, and they placed him as king, coronated him as king in place of his father. Lots of questions. Why did the people do this? Why did they have to just say Yehoachaz became king, etc.? Many questions to be discussed. Now, what I need to talk about with you for a moment has to do with the next couple of weeks. Next week, there's not a single night of the week that I'm available next week. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, not one. Baruch Hashem, number of smachot coming up, and also B'li'ayin Hara, 40 years anniversary with my wife and myself. But we're not doing anything for it necessarily.
Mazal tov,
But thank you.
mazal tov.
Result of
Amen. The following week, what is going to be Sunday is the fast day, and I never know how I'm going to feel, so I can't commit to that. So we'll probably do that week Wednesday, unless there was a problem with Wednesday. Just a minute, I'll tell you the dates right now. Take a quick look at the calendar. They go ahead a week. That's the fast day. So that Wednesday is June. Oh no, right. And then I'm doing a bunch of book launches. So June 30th is the Hebrew book launch. I can't do that. And I'm going to be on Monday night. I have the Beit Shemesh book launch. So what I'd like to see if we can maybe do that week. And I really don't like doing Thursday. Thursday night. Maybe we'll do Thursday night, the 1st of July. Maybe. And then the following week, which is the week of July 4th, Sunday night, I'm also going to be in Neve Aliza, and Wednesday, and it's going to be hit or miss. So I'm just telling you all now that over the next 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to be, next week for sure we can't meet, but the following week it'll be a different night. The following week could be a different night. I'm not going to let it go other than next week to go a full week without a class, Bezrat Hashem. So that's my scoop. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I wish you all a good evening. And is it possible to do during sometime during the day? So the answer is yes. What I will do is I will send out certain days because I'm finished with school pretty much. Certain maybe during the day. Now I know for Aryeh that may be a problem.
Can we do it at 8:30 in the morning?
I can, in theory. Yes, in theory. That's actually, we can do that at least once, just not to miss a week. So let me take a look at the schedule. I'm going to make a note for myself to like send out a note, say, okay, here, choose between these 3 options or something. Not Wednesday morning, because I give a class Wednesday morning. Right, exactly. And I have a doctor's appointment, and I have a bunch of stuff. It's just a very, very busy 3 or 4 weeks coming up right now. And then it's going to be the holiday of Tisha B'Av, Bezrat Hashem. So obviously on Tisha B'Av, we'll be dancing and singing, and we'll just take this and see what it used to be like. Okay, have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Be well. Bye-bye.